Exactly 1 week ago since recording this video, I ran the world's hilliest half marathon brought to you by All Day Running Company. And it was one of the most insane experiences of my life. When I say that it is the hilliest half marathon in the world, I am not exaggerating. It was 13.1 miles up and down a hill, one single loop, and it was around zero point 0.1 up, zero point 0.1 down. And I actually just got an email from the All Day Running Company saying exactly this. I'm going to quote them right now in this email. If you were to take the 6 world marathons in New York, Boston, Berlin, London, Tokyo, Chicago, and add up the cumulative vertical gain in those 6 marathons, they amount to around 2,600 feet. Our vertical gain was 4,400 feet, and we are 40% steeper than the cumulative amount of the 6 world marathons combined. And they run that over the course of 152 miles. We did that in 13 miles. So this was an insane experience that I wanted to come in and talk about. I know that I talk about video marketing, but there were so many lessons, 5 specifically, that I got from the training and the prep before the event and during the event and after that actually have a lot of relevance to how you're running your business and how you're building your video strategies. So in this video, I'm going to talk to you about some of the biggest lessons and how you can then go and apply those to your videos as well. So first off, if you are here watching with me live, drop me a hashtag live. Let me know you're here and that you are watching, or if you're watching the replay, you can drop me a hashtag replay. And one thing that I'll say is I'm going to be really raw and honest about a lot of the experiences that I did have, because to be honest with you, some of them weren't very pretty. Some of them I don't consider a success. So I'm going to be really real about some of the stuff that went down. So if you don't know me, first off, my name is Alex. I'm a video marketing strategist who's helped thousands of entrepreneurs build really simple videos without the tech overwhelm, without making things super complicated. And today is going to be a different type of video, like I said, but I'm truly hoping that this video is going to be one that gives you, some tools that you might be missing right now, or some ways of thinking about things that might be a little bit different. So just to give you a little bit of context on this race, hey, April, good to have you here. This is one that I spur of the moment signed up for 6 weeks ago. I had 6 weeks to train. Before this, it was really I had run maybe 3 miles. I'm not a runner. I like strength-based things. I was always a power lifter. I competed in powerlifting for many years, but I really wasn't interested in running. But I was like, you know what? I love this company that's launching, All Day Running Company by Jesse Itzler. I'll talk about him throughout this too. And you can check out the All Day Running Company as well. I'm not like a sponsor or anything. I just think they're amazing and going to do really amazing things. They just launched, but I hadn't run more than 3 miles before the 6 weeks. So I went from barely being able to run 3 miles to doing the hilliest half marathon in the world in 6 weeks, right? Which I think is pretty crazy. So I'm going to talk about, like I said, the lessons and the learnings from all of that. So the first lesson number 1 that I want to share is that it's your job to set the tone for how you want your audience to behave and how you want them to show up, right? And I know some of you might be like, well, I can only control so much. And absolutely. So we're going to talk about what you can control and what you can do. And I'm going to talk about, too, the best pep talk in the world. So this race was 2 days. And the night before the race started, on a Thursday night, we had workshops, and it was really like a big event. It wasn't just a race. It was really like a retreat for 24 hours. So Thursday night, there were all these workshops and speakers, and the founder, Jesse Itzler, gets up as we're talking about what to expect for the next day and basically gives us this pep talk on what you can expect for tomorrow and like how you should be thinking about tomorrow, right? And so some of the things that he said is, either what you're going to do is you're going to run the full 4 hours that we give you for this race, or you're going to get to the 65 laps. That means you finished before the time is up. But either way, there's no quitting, right? That's not a thing here. Nobody is quitting, right? Giving up is not an option. He talked a little bit about how suffering is a reward. He talked about the pain cave that comes with really, really intense, like pushing yourself physically outside of your comfort zone. He shared stories about like family members, like for example, his son. He shared stories about how, a story about how his son had like anxiety and like didn't want to go to school and how he overcame that challenge. So there are all these like nuggets that he was sharing. And why I am sharing this with all of you is because you might be thinking like, what does this have to do with your videos? But here's the thing. The same thing he did before the race is what we need to do with our videos, where we want to be the ones to set the tone for how our audience shows up with us, right? So one thing that I hear a lot from my students is they're frustrated that why isn't their audience understand how quickly they could actually get results, or why is their audience waiting to take action? Why aren't they investing themselves? Why don't they see how simple this is? And it's like trying to force and convince people versus having really clear ways to beat people to the punch so that before their audience can ever start to like self-sabotage, they're already calling out some of these things, where I guarantee you, if he had not gone through and given this little pep talk beforehand and called out all of these objections that people might have had, perhaps during the race, people would have said, oh, well, it's okay. It's cool if I just stop at hour 2. Do I really have to do the full 65? Or, maybe someone would say, I just wasn't prepared enough. You guys didn't give me enough information. And so when you can get ahead of people and can start to call out their objections before and set the tone for what is and isn't okay for the space that you hold, that's a really, really powerful thing. And we want to be able to do that with our videos as well. So let me know if that's making sense to you so far, for those of you guys who are watching live or watching the replay of this. But that is lesson number 1, set the tone with your audience in your videos. All right, lesson number 2. This is a really, really powerful one, probably one of the most powerful ones. But lesson number 2, I'll start out with this quote. And this was during this pep talk that I just mentioned before. And it is, shame on you if you feel sorry for yourself tomorrow on that hill. Like I said, this was part of that pep talk. And I was like, oh, wow, like that's powerful. And essentially what it means is for someone to have attended that race in Maine means that they could afford to pay for the ticket. It was a higher ticket event. It means they could afford to either drive or fly there. It means they were physically able, meaning like they could walk. They didn't have health conditions that would prevent them from going up and down this hill 65 times across 4 hours. It means that like mentally they were okay to do it. Like there were so many basic privileges that we take for granted, having the money, having the time to take off from work, having the physical ability, right? That's essentially what he was getting at, is that if you're here, you have all of these privileges that a lot of people might not have. And tomorrow, while you are doing those 65 laps, if you feel sorry for yourself tomorrow and you pity yourself and you feel bad, right? You don't truly appreciate like how much privilege you have and what an opportunity you actually have in front of you. And again, when I think about video and when I think about building your business, I think the same exact thing is true, where all the time I hear people say things like, oh, well, do I have to go live? Do I have to do this? Do I have to do that? Right? And number one, you don't have to do anything. You get to choose how you want to spend your time. You can choose how you want to spend your money. That's the wrong way to look at it. It should be, I get to go live. I get to create videos. I get to show up and serve my audience every single day. And I think the privileges that we don't acknowledge are, number one, you're someone who has Wi-Fi. You're someone who has access to technology. You're someone who is in a place where you can spend the time. You're in a safe environment where you're able to, coach and teach. You're in a place where you are able to get an education, or you had enough education that you're able to teach others. And now that you have all of these little micro privileges that you've become so accustomed to, you take them for granted. And it's that same thing. It's like, shame on you if you feel like you feel sorry for yourself that you have to go live, or you feel sorry for yourself that you have to show up for your audience. And it's really the wrong way of looking at it. And the entire time that I was on that hill, it was me saying to myself, I'm so lucky to be here. I'm so freaking lucky to be here. Because 3 years ago, when I was starting my business, like, I couldn't have attended that. I couldn't have afforded to go, time-wise, money-wise, and like, I just wasn't in a place where I could have spent the time training for it either. So the whole time, I will not feel sorry for myself. I'm so lucky to be here, right? So I think acknowledging those privileges that you have are really, really important. All right, so I hope this is hitting home with you so far. So far we've talked about, number one, it's your job to set the tone in your life, in your videos. We've talked about number two, making sure you're acknowledging any like the privileges that you have, and not treating things like a chore, but understanding like what an opportunity you have in front of you. And then we've got number three. This is a really good one. Contagious messages thrive during times of suffering. So what does that mean? Contagious messages thrive during times of suffering. So what that means is content and ideas that are sticky, that are memorable, that are easy to say, and that are kind of catchy and have a great ring to them. Those things will then go on to be remembered, especially during tough situations. And I'll give an example. During that incredible pep talk that Jesse, the founder of All Day Running Company, gave us the night before, he talked about how he did this ultra marathon. And by mile, I'm going to botch this, it was like mile 70 something maybe, he was like ready to give up. And I think it was like 100-mile race or something, which is insane. And leading up to it, his training, like, he'd kind of been struggling with some of the training, and he hired this Marine, or he trained with this Marine who was helping him through it. And, this Marine came with him to the race, and he was getting to, that 70-mile mark. And he was like, I just don't think I could do it. I'm literally gassed. Like, I don't think I can give any more, like, done. Right. And so this Marine, like, he told the story about how this Marine was like, no, we're going to finish. And this Marine kept making him say, I don't get tired. We don't get tired. And he made Jesse go to every single person at the race that they passed and say like something like, I don't get tired, or we don't get tired. And he just kept saying it. And why I'm sharing this is because the next day on that hill, every single person on that hill was saying, I don't get tired. I don't get tired, because they heard his story from last night. That is contagious messaging. So again, when we think about like how these lessons apply to your videos, it should be the same. Where when people leave your videos, they are then going on to say those things in times of suffering. For example, for my audience, one thing I say all the time is done is better than perfect. Just get it done. Another one is just fail forward. And I hear my students say it all the time as well. Hey, Melissa, good to have you here. I love that mantra. Love it. So when you are thinking about creating content, right, you want to start to create content with these big, bold, sticky points. because those are the things that are going to be remembered. And then people are going to come back. And then you're creating this community that uses all of those words that you are then teaching, right? And really one of the biggest things that bonds people together is language, right? It's so true. So this is really helpful. And I see Melissa saying, I use the messages you teach me in my Facebook group all the time. I love that. Love it. All right. So that is lesson number 3. Contagious messages thrive in times of suffering. Okay. We're going to move on to lesson number 4. And let me know if you guys have questions on this race, questions on really anything you'd like to know about any of this stuff that we're talking about. You can drop them in the comments. So let's talk about number 4. So lesson number 4 of 5 is that it is dangerous to be a big fish in a small pond. So what that means is it's not good to be the biggest person, the smartest person, the most well-endowed, the most the highest achieving person in the room, right? And maybe you've heard this is like a common saying, but like nothing was clearer to me during this race than I need to find more people that are doing ridiculously crazy, outrageous things where every single person I met at this race, granted, like it attracted a certain type of people. It was like mostly entrepreneurs or CEOs or people who were like very, very accomplished and seasoned and decorated. Like I said, it was a higher ticket event. It was like almost $2,000. People from all over the world came. So I think his audience and the price point like attracted a certain type, a certain caliber. But also like when you had all of those people in one place, it just becomes so obvious how much more you could be doing, how much more you could be evolving. So when I was doing my training leading up, I was like the big fish. Like I was running outside every day. I was doing these crazy hill sprints up and down my street. My neighbors were like asking me questions. I think they thought I was a little bit crazy because I was like running barefoot on the street. I was like out there every single day, working out in my garage, going to the gym. Like I had people in my audience who were cheering me on. Some of you guys too, who are, supporting me. And I was like, oh, cool. I'm going to do so good. I'm like on fire. And I totally appreciated that. Right? I totally did. But getting to this race, there were Olympic athletes that were at this race. There were people in like the most ridiculous shape, not just physically, but mentally, right? Like people, like the mental and the physical discipline, like some of these people had were next level that like I have never seen in my life. And so it was like this humbling moment. And I'll talk more about like a humbling moment for this last piece. But it really was a humbling moment to see like, wow, like I have so much to go and like I'm barely scratching the surface and I shouldn't be so comfortable in such a small pond. Like I need to start getting myself in situations where I can be the small fish in a big pond that has a lot more room to grow. Right? And like think about people say this all the time. This is like a very common thing, but right, like your network is your network. The people that you're surrounded by, like whatever result they are getting, you're probably going to get too. So if you're surrounded by people who suck or who just like aren't go-getters or who are poor or who are, they just sort of like don't take the same type of action, right? Like that's the same trajectory for the most part your life is going to be. And again, I'm not saying you can't have people from different levels, right? And like different areas. That's not what I'm saying. But if you are not aligning with yourself with people who are just like scary as all hell, that is a problem. Like that's going to impact your growth, right? That's going to impact your ability to evolve. So one thing that I always like to say too is find people who are like valued, not like-minded. Right? So for example, like-minded people will yes you. Like-minded people will Like we'll say, oh, you did such a good job. Don't worry about it if you gave up 2 hours into this race. The fact that you went all the way there at all is great. Or don't worry about it that you didn't finish everything on your to-do list today. Like it's not a big deal. It's people who will just sort of like make you feel good and comfortable, and it comes from a loving place, right? So the people who kind of just like confirm and affirm you versus the like valued people who have the same values as you, but take a very different path, who aren't just going to yes you, but are going to challenge you and who are going to push you to that next level. So ask yourself, like, do you have more people who are like-minded, who will confirm you? Or do you have people who are like valued, that see the world in a similar way, but have such a different way and experience of getting there, right? Cool. So I see, I'm just reading the comments. So I see, I appreciate you, Melissa, saying, how lucky are we to have this woman as a coach? Love it. I appreciate you. Totally. Susan saying, I can see that. Humbling. Also maybe some gratitude, pride for jumping into a bigger pond. Yes, absolutely. Okay, cool. So that's the biggest thing for lesson 4. It's dangerous to be a big fish in a small pond. All right, cool. And then the last lesson that I'm going to share here is one that actually, like, I feel like has been, this is where I'm going to get a little bit more vulnerable. This has like been haunting me a little bit. And maybe some of you have seen my posts that I've written on this, but like this was probably the most humbling moment out of this entire experience that I went through. So the lesson is that failure is a decision. And I think sometimes, and when I say sometimes, I'm talking about myself too, where sometimes I feel like sometimes failure just happens, right? Sometimes failure just happens to me where like, oh, I don't hit something, or I don't make a certain goal, or I just, I didn't achieve something, right? And it sort of felt like something passive, like it was happening to me versus me making a decision that caused it to happen. So for this race, it was 65 laps up and down this hill. And either you were going to finish the 65 laps before the 4-hour timer was up, or you were just going to run the full 4 hours, right? And so the 4 hours ended in the middle of lap 60. So I had less than 4 laps. It was less than 1 mile. And like thinking about those 4 laps now is like haunting me, because thinking back, like I've been thinking about it over and over again, and thinking back to it, it was a decision to not get to 65. And it takes a lot for me to say that. Like it's hard for me to say that because it's raw and it feels very real still. Like this was literally a week ago, right? Like at this time last week, I was just finishing this. And I just want to talk through that a little bit, because again, it's hard to say something like this, because I think a lot of people and specifically mine, will be like, oh, but you did the full 4 hours. And the fact that, you only had run 3 miles before this and you only trained for 6 weeks. Like there's all these reasons to be proud. And I am proud. I am proud that it was never an option that I wouldn't finish the 4 hours. There was never a moment where I stopped. There was never a moment where I gave up at all in that sense. But there is an opportunity for me where I'm like, all right, I decided not to finish the whole thing. Where when I think back to the events, the moment was when I was at 3, it was like a little over 3 hours. And I definitely could have finished, right? Like math-wise, time-wise, based off the laps, like it was doable for me to finish. But I was dying, right? Like my feet were like in bad shape. Like I was so stiff, like I was cramping up. Like it was just not comfortable. Like it really was. And I wasn't like at risk for injury or anything like that, but it was the most uncomfortable experience I've ever had in my entire life. Like I've never done something that physically challenging where at the 3-hour mark of walking this hill, running this hill, I was literally breaking down in tears. And it was these micro decisions where I was like, it's okay to slow down. And it's okay to go not power walk up the hill. It's okay not to run down the hill. It's okay to like give my mind a break from some of the self-talk. And there were all these decisions where I was talking myself out of having to hit the 65, because if I went for the 65, the amount of emotional and physical pain I would have been in would have been even more. And I think I was avoiding that. And this is me being very, very honest, where I could just be like, I'm so proud of everything I did. And I am really, really proud of like what I did. Don't get me wrong. But the lesson here is that this failure didn't happen to me. It was a decision that I made. And if you look at some of the things that you're doing in your business, in your video strategy, in your life, there are those same moments where you start to slow down a little bit, where you start to be okay letting the reins go, where you start to let your mindset go a little bit, where you start to talk yourself out of the thing, and it's not conscious. And because this event was 4 hours versus over a long stretch of time, it was easier for me to look at it and be like, where did this start to fall apart? Where in the timeline did this start to fall apart for me? And it was at the 3-hour mark. I could have finished. And that is the thing where, and this isn't me trying to just beat myself up. It's me being real about like how many times, either for myself or for other people that I see, you're so freaking close to the thing that you're trying to do. And then we make these micro decisions that cause us to fail. And we feel like failure is happening to us, but it's really these micro decisions that we're making. Right? So let me know if this is hitting home with you. I don't know if this is a super popular thing to say, but I think it's real, and it's still like so raw. I'm like getting emotional talking about it a little bit. But it's firing me up a lot. Like working out today, like I'm back working out again, like working out today, like my workouts have been on another level because all I can think about like are those micro decisions that I made during that sabotage that success. And now it's just, more and more, changing the way I think and changing the way that I'm approaching things, right? So I'm consciously choosing to make this decision to kind of take this apart a little bit more. The easy thing for me to do in this scenario would just sort of celebrate and just sort of be like, oh, well, I still did over 12 miles on a hill, right? When before this, 6 weeks before the race, I could barely run 3 miles, right? Like, I'm not saying there isn't progress. I'm not saying there isn't so much to celebrate. But again, I'm just always trying to level up and look at what this could look like. So I hope that this has been a helpful video for all of you. I hope that, you've got some good nuggets from this. Let me know in the comments below, like, what was your biggest takeaway from this? If you've got questions, you can drop them in the comments as well. But I would also highly recommend to take a look at the All Day Running Company Instagram. I put the link to them in the description of this video. You can see the whole course. You can see all the Olympic athletes that came. You can see like all the amazing people that participated. One of the most amazing supportive groups that I've ever like had the privilege to be a part of. So I know that there were a lot of lessons and failures and successes that I talked about, but probably one of the most valuable experiences I've been through. And I'm super grateful that I got to share it with you all. And I hope that this was powerful. Cool. All right. Well, that is it for today. I hope you all have a lovely, lovely weekend. If you watched with me live, drop me a hashtag live, or if you watch the replay, you can drop me a hashtag replay. And I will see you all very soon.